It's an honor to be here with you guys. How many of you have been afflicted with having to listen to me before? Anyone? You too. Front and center too, right? I think as far as testimonies go, Pastor Ernie's going to be hearing mine for about the dozenth time.
Yeah, that's all right.
Combination of this visit and the last visit during March. My name is Emad. I'm from Alberta. I live just outside of Rocky Mountain House. I go to school there. I just finished my second year of Bible college at Living Faith Bible College. And I live there with my wife and my daughter and another daughter on the way within a couple of weeks. We're hoping she'll hang on until I get back. So as it's been said, and I know this has been hyped a lot, so I hope I don't disappoint. My testimony is a little different than average, but it's nothing extravagant. There's a lot of ex-Muslims out there who've got testimonies which will blow mine right out of the water. How many, is everyone here, and I hope you don't mind me asking, putting people on the spot, is everyone here a believer? Everybody? Yeah, okay, that way I just know, I can gauge my audience. I'm a very new convert to Christianity. I was baptized in 2012. And I'm obviously not originally from Canada. So I don't speak Christianese. I haven't grown up in the church. I'm a little raw and rough edges and all of that. So I hope you'll forgive with your kindness. I was born back in 1978 in a country called Iran. If you remember your history, your recent history, 78 is the year where the revolution happened in Iran. And Iran as a country was not known by that name all the time. Traditionally, historically, Iran was referred to as Persia. The country that's Iran today actually consists of three biblical lands: Media, Persia, and Elam. And you find all of those all over the prophecies. So you know that the country is going to play an unfortunate role in the times to come. So in 1978, I was born in the fall. It was right in the middle of the revolution. After 2,500 years, the monarchy was basically being abolished in Iran, and Ayatollah Khomeini was coming in, and the theocracy and Islamic rule was coming in. So by the time that I was born and I knew what was going on, I was born into an Islamic theocracy. My parents were not practicing Muslims. They were quite secular. My grandparents, especially on my mother's side, were very practicing, very pious people, and I eventually gravitated towards them a little more. And as I said, I was born a Muslim. A lot of people ask me, what do you mean you were born a Muslim? The way it works, if you're born in an Islamic country and into an Islamic family, the minute within minutes of you being born and cleaned up, the first person that lays hands on you is the eldest person of the family. So it's usually one of the grandfathers, whoever's the eldest. And that person basically holds you, puts their mouth to your ear, and recites the Islamic creed in your ear. And that makes you a Muslim. And the catch is, you can't leave. You can't leave Islam. Leaving Islam is considered apostasy and is punishable by death. So I was born a Muslim. Didn't know anything else. I didn't know anything different. I was not presented with a list of options about which God and which creed and which faith I was going to follow. So that's all I knew. As the destiny would have it, my Maker had made me a certain way. So I was a nosy, inquisitive kind of kid from the time I was little. I was always very talkative and asked a lot of questions. And I also had this notion that the point to life is to search for truth. And from very early on, I realized that there's three values, the three concepts you need to understand if you're searching for truth. Number one, truth is an absolute. Truth is a constant. I don't buy all this mumbo jumbo of the new age of the relative truth and everybody's got their own truth. Number two, if you're searching for truth, you got to be courageous enough and willing to go wherever it takes you.
Right on, man.
Thank you. My head head's going to start swelling already. This is an easy audience.
I know.
You gotta relax. And the third thing is, if you're searching for truth, you have to be willing to admit to yourself when you find out that you've been wrong. Otherwise, you're going to wallow in the same error and the same mistake over and over because you're not willing to move on. And this really has helped me out quite a bit throughout my life. Mind you, it's brought me the long way. I literally took the longest way. I don't know how far you guys all came to be here, but I've come halfway across the world, literally. If my slide ever goes up and we can figure it out, these new computers, they just don't want to work with you. And I'll show you the map. Iran is literally halfway across the world. It's literally 12 hours time away from you. So as I grew up, as I started to understand how the world was, one of the things that always really fascinated me was God. You know, there's nothing greater than God. He's the ultimate truth. So if you're searching for truth, you're searching for Him. And the only God that I knew was Allah. That was the only option I was ever given. So I started really headlong, earnestly, practicing and learning about my faith. And to do that, I hang out mostly with my maternal grandparents because they were the mosque goers and the ones who practiced their faith fully. I started to learn about the Quran. I started to learn Arabic in order to learn the Quran even better. A lot of people don't realize the majority of the Muslims, the majority of what is called the Muslim world, and I'll discuss this with you guys tomorrow, are not Arab speaking and are not Arabs. Arabs are exclusively from the Arabian Peninsula. All the other lands where they speak Arabic and where they're Islamicized, they become that way through conquest, through the sword, if you would. So in Iran, for example, our language is Persian or Farsi. But Quran can only be read in Arabic. The prayers can only be done in Arabic. So you have to learn Arabic if you want to understand. Now most people don't care to understand, most Muslims, so they just learn how to just mimic the sounds and parrot the whole thing. But I wanted to know, what was it that I was reading, what was it that I was saying, what was I praying for? And I started to learn Arabic. And during this time, to give you a background of what the society was like, I mean, Iran had transformed within a few short years from the very westernized country in the middle of the Middle East, under the Shah, into this absolute horror of a theocracy. And what had really moved everything along was that within 2 years after the revolution, Mr. Saddam Hussein, if you remember him, he decided to invade Iran and use that chaos of the revolution to come in and try to take over the oil fields in the south. And what happened here was, even though during the revolution there were many factions of people, including even communists in Iran, communists and progressives and seculars were involved in the revolution because they were tired of the corruption. By the time that the revolution had fomented, very much like if you study history and you look at the French Revolution, one faction, being the Islamists, had taken over. They had hijacked the revolution. And by the time people realized this and tried to struggle against it, then Saddam came in and attacked the country. And when you have an external threat coming attacking your homeland, then you kind of leave the problems at home for the time being and you go deal with that. And this problem didn't go away that quickly. It went from 1980 to 1988. So for 8 years, there was a war of attrition between these two countries. And if you ever look up the footage and the pictures and the history of it, it was basically a World War I style trench warfare with modern weapons. After 8 years, the borders were left absolutely untouched, and over 1 million people dead, and about 2 million people maimed on both sides. Cities destroyed, a lot of young men dead. But what this did was it gave that 8 years time to the Islamic regime to solidify its power and to completely stretch its tentacles all over the society. So by the time that I was a 6-7-year-old kid and I was starting to go to school, the whole society was completely a fragmented piece. There was segregation along gender lines. There was segregation along religious lines. Boys and girls schools were segregated. The buses were segregated. Women sat in the back of the bus blocked off, men sat in the front. All the Jews and the Armenians and the Baha'is, Armenians or Iranian Christians have been there for about 2,000 years. The Jews and the Christians were all in their own neighborhoods. A Muslim was not allowed to go into a Jewish or a Christian eatery and vice versa. And propaganda was basically the norm of the day. So when I went to school at 7 years old, the school we went to, the all-boys school that we went to, all boys, all Muslim kids schools, we would line up in our courtyard for the first half an hour of the day, rain or shine, and we would get state propaganda played at us from the radio. And then we would pray for the glory of the Islamic Revolution and for the Ayatollah and for the rest of the mullahs in charge, and then we would march into the school building. And when we marched into the school building from the schoolyard, I vividly remember having the Israeli, the British, and the American flag painted at the entrance. And we were encouraged to actually stomp on it as we went in. So the propaganda started before we even started our school days, school day. And it wasn't any different when you were inside. I mean, like all the books were redacted. You were being told what history was based on what they wanted to believe, what they wanted you to believe, and basically a giant brainwashing machine. That's what the country had turned into. Now, amid all of these things, I still, like I said, I was still the kind of young, naive, trusting kid. So I didn't see this as a result of Islam. I just saw this as a result of corruption of the rulers, corruption of the power. But as I started to learn more and more about my Islamic faith, as I started going to the mosque and listening to sermons, as I started actually reading the Quran, I started having questions. Because I would see concepts, read things that didn't make sense, that were contradictory, and I wanted to ask and find out about it. Because I wasn't about to swallow anything hook, line, and sinker. You know, I believe if my maker, if my creator created me with a brain, he wanted me to use it. One of the first things I ever asked questions about was, why, if Allah is the creator of the whole universe, why is it that he only speaks in Arabic and he only understands Arabic? Why can't I pray in my own language? Why can't I translate and read the Quran in a different language? And of course, when you ask these questions, you get punished, you get ostracized. And later on, as I learned more about the Islamic faith, I found out that was actually an Islamic concept. There's 2 verses in the Quran which basically forbids you from asking questions regarding your Islamic faith. There's one, the narration from the Muhammad, which actually forbids you from asking questions regarding the religious matters. So you're actually forbidden to ask questions. The Quranic verses that talk about this actually say that if you ask questions about these matters and they become clear to you, it will cause you to have hardship. And the people before you who asked questions ended up becoming disbelievers. So it's literally telling you, don't ask, because if I tell you what the whole thing means, then you're going to leave Islam. That's why you don't ask questions. But I obviously kept on asking questions. I would ask, why is it that the Quran says that all men are created equal, that the Jews and Christians are people of the book, as the Quran calls them? You know, they believe in the same God as us, but we don't eat with them, we don't touch them, we don't sit next to them. You know, that in the cafeterias, the utensils go in a different bin. You know, that they drink out of different water faucets. They live in their own neighborhoods. We can't sit next to them in a taxi because they're unclean. So what kind of equality is that? Or how is it that the Quran says men and women are equal, they're created equal, but women's value in Islam is in some aspects less than dirt. And a lot of these things I'll get into later on with you over the next 2 days. The testimony of a woman is considered half as much of a man's testimony. The inheritance of a woman in Islam is half of a man's. Women are actually considered less clean than dirt. The Quran says that you believer, if you come in contact with a dead body, or with a dog, or with a woman, before you commit to prayer, you must cleanse yourself, and if you can't find water, find some dirt and rub your hand in your face with it. It's basically saying that women are less clean than dirt. I would ask questions about some huge scientific issues with the claims of Islam. Islam says that all creation was made out of water. Islam says that the earth is flat. Islam says that or not Islam per se, the Quran says, which is supposed to be the words of Allah, Allah says that the mountains are pegs to hold the earth down, spread out. The Quran, Allah in the Quran says the sun is a flat disc. It sets in a pool of mud every night at the far end of the earth. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I want to kind of keep you guys along, keep you interested. We'll get to the Quran in a bit. But these things started becoming questions for me, and mind you, these are trivial and very basic compared to the things that I've come to learn by now, because I've been actually doing more in-depth study of it. But around the age of 13, all these questions and all these doubts had mounted enough for me to start, as the song goes, lose my religion. I couldn't put my faith in Islam anymore. I couldn't put my faith in a book and in a God who didn't understand his own creation. I couldn't put my faith in a prophet whose morality was under question. Because when I start explaining to you what Muhammad really was and what he did, according to their own sources, the guy would have been strung up in today's days. So around the age of 13, I started moving on from religion. And in the Middle East, if there's no religion to keep you occupied, then that's the next best thing, the thing that makes your heart beat, is politics. So I started getting involved in politics. And now that was another big problem, because in Iran it's a one-party system. It's an Islamic party. There is no opposition. All oppositions are banned. And I obviously have to get involved with opposition parties, underground parties. Started getting active, little kind of mischievous things at first, spray painting walls and, put in publications under neighbors' doors and things like that. And eventually, I was inducted into a gifted children's program school, where they basically went around, and anybody who had a couple of brain cells thrown up together, they put them in that school, because they said these guys are going to be troublemakers. So we need to up the propaganda on them and watch them closely. But what they didn't realize was that they were putting all the eggheads together, all the eggheads in one basket, if you will, and that backfired on them, because now we became a little squad of mischievous kids. And for about 3 years, from the age of 13 to the age of 16, that was my kind of the daily life. The school was just an excuse to get out of the house and go out and do whatever I could to stick it to the man, if you will, in this case to the mullah. But the problem was that by the age of 16, in 1994, my luck had run out. I was sticking out like a sore thumb so bad. I mean, forget the whole black sheep thing. I was the black camel. I stuck out that bad. That I was under watch, and I finally got caught. I got caught in school with a bunch of these publications, very severe punishments. I don't know if you've ever heard of foot caning or foot whipping. It's a favorite form of punishment in the Middle East. Basically, they lay you down, they strip your feet bare, tie it to a stick, two people hold it up, and one person comes with a cane or with a cable or with a strap, and they go to work on the bottoms of your feet until they swell up and you can't walk. So that was just the initial, the physical punishment, if you will. Subsequently, they expelled me from school. They banned me from education. They banned me from working government. And this is what they do to Christians. They do this to Jews, to Baha'is, and to troublemakers. Basically, what they do is they cut your hand from the future, from any say or role in the future of the country. You can't educate education. You can't work your way up in the government. So you're basically left to labor, basically. Another thing that you need to understand about a country like Iran, they have what is called a mandatory military service. Any boy who reaches the age of 16 and is not attending school and does not have dependents, his father is still alive, he gets inducted, he gets taken into the army for 2 years and 2 months mandatory service. And that's basically what I got in the mail. I got conscription papers within a couple of months of being expelled. So here I am, a little kid, being taken to the army, and My parents during this time, as I said, my parents were secular. They were upper middle class. My mother was an instructor at a university. My father was the head of the mechanical department of the Iranian gas, the national gas company. They were well-to-do, good positions, but now their positions and their jobs were coming under intense scrutiny because of me. And I also have two other brothers, one 2 years younger than me, one an infant, who were going to have their future basically ruined because of their association with their brother. So my parents during this time, and what they say to this day, is that if we hadn't left Iran, you would have been dead or rotting in a corner of a political prison somewhere. Because I wasn't done. If anything, the punishments and all the hardship actually kind of fired me up. So my parents during this whole time, without telling anybody else, have been working on getting us out of the country. But that's tricky too, because immigration is also illegal under Iranian rules. It's considered defection, just like North Korea and China. So what they had to do was, first of all, they did their research. They figured out that at the time, 1994, 1995, the two Western countries that were taking in immigrants based on their merits and education were Canada and Australia. So they had done some research and they figured out that Canada would offer a lot better future for us than Australia. Now, in order for them to facilitate immigration to Canada, they had to go to the Canadian Embassy and apply, but they couldn't just simply walk into the Canadian Embassy in Tehran. You know, the walls watch you in Iran. That's the saying that we have. You know, the walls are always watching. So what they had to do was they had to pretend that they're going for pilgrimage to Damascus, Syria, to holy sites there. And once there, they had snuck to the Canadian Embassy in Damascus, filled out an application, stayed there for 2 weeks, got a chance to have 2 interviews back-to-back, passed the interviews, were given the okay for immigration to Canada, and now there was another problem. Now they had to come back and get me out of the country, and out of the army first and out of the country. Because they could travel out, they could pretend they're going for a vacation, but I couldn't leave the country. I was not only was I a conscripted soldier, but I was also a troublemaker on a no-fly list of types. So what they did was that through a lot of trickery and forgery, they got me a 2-week leave from the army on compassionate grounds because they said his uncle is dying. And he needs to come and see his uncle and what happened. They're big on sentiments down there. Once they got me out of the army, they had me travel to the Turkish border with Iran, which is in the northwest of the country. They entrusted me to some Kurdish smugglers who took me on muleback across the mountains into Turkey. My parents and my 2 brothers had flown to Amsterdam meanwhile. My paternal uncle, who lives in Turkey, basically took possession of me in Turkey after 3 days. From there, he put me on a flight, sent me to Amsterdam, met with my parents, and flew to Canada and landed in Vancouver February 26, 1995. And that was kind of the first half. That was our exodus from Iran. Now, when we came here, we had maybe a suitcase and a gym bag each to our names, because they couldn't just pack everything and move. They couldn't let it be known that they're taking everything with them. They couldn't, we had orchard, we had a house, they had cars. They couldn't sell any of that stuff because it would give it away. So literally everything was left. And everything was eventually confiscated, because now you're defectors, and I'm also AWOL, right? So we came here with a few suitcases. Besides my mom, nobody knew any English. We were halfway across the world, new country, new people, new customs, new culture, new language, new smell. I used to tell my parents, it smells different here. Come to find out, we're in Vancouver. In Vancouver, there's so much moisture, everything's rotting all the time. So it was the smell of rot, like from all the wood there. But it took a while to get used to things over here. But I knew that here, like when we came to Canada, for one, I could never go back. And because I couldn't go back to Iran, I said, this is where I'm going to make my home. And before I had left, my grandfather, whom I was very close to, he basically told me, he said, son, you're going to make your home. We're never going to see you again. Learn the culture, learn the language, and learn the history of where you're going, because that's going to be your home. And I've really endeavored to do that, you know. So when we arrived here, the first couple of years were really hard because it was assimilation and learning the language and going from basically a deaf mute to someone who understands the basics. But the minute I got over that little hump and I started being able to speak properly enough. And I always tell people, I say, the moment I realized that I was thinking and constructing conversations in my head in English, I knew I had it made. I was on a bus going to my job at Pizza Hut, and I was late, and in my head I was constructing the conversation I was going to have with my manager about why I'm late. And I realized I was doing it in English. She's going to say this, and I'm going to say this, you know? And that was a transformation day. But once I basically had the tools of living and exploring my new life and my new country, now it was time to get back to my original quest, which was the quest for truth, right? And now the good thing was that I was a kid in a candy store. Now I had access to all sorts of books and ideologies. There was no banned book list. There was no ideology I couldn't explore. You know, nobody was going to get in trouble for proselytizing to me. I wasn't going to get in trouble for going into a Hindu temple or into Scientology, the building, you know. Hindsight, that's not exactly a good thing, you know. But there's freedom. The greatest asset of the West is the fact that you guys have, so far, freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And the day you lose that, that's the day that you lose your gem. So I started exploring things, but here's the deal. I still wanted to understand and learn about God. But because I was told all my life that the God of Islam is the same as the God of Judaism and the same as the God of Christianity, I threw the baby out with the bathwater. I said, because I know the God of Islam is a false God, then he's the same God as these two religions. I want nothing to do with it. So I never even explored Judaism and Christianity, but I explored every other thing. You know, I explored every political party there was. Did you guys know there's an active communist party in DC? Yeah, I went to their rallies, you know. I went to Hindu ashrams. I checked out Taoism, Taoism, Hinduism, Sikhism. I sat down with the Moonies and I hung out with the hippies, and I went to Scientology, and I joined the Freemasons, and anything you could think of. I mean, I was out there just trying my best to get answers. But because, again, remember my three concepts for searching for truth, it wasn't allowing me to fall for everything that came along. So I would go to something, listen to them, read their material, and ask them questions and find issues with it. You know, like Buddhism was very appealing. But then when you start to really look into Buddhism, you go, what is this nirvana that you're supposed to reach? Oh, everybody wants to reach nirvana. Oh, it's a state of nothingness. It's when you cease to exist. Well, that doesn't work. You know, what is the highest order of Hinduism? Well, you keep on getting reincarnated until you come back as a Brahmin, and after a Brahmin, you don't reincarnate anymore. You cease to exist. You know, things just don't make sense, so you move on from them. Now, unfortunately, over time, I gave up on the spirituality for answers. I started gravitating towards the idea that, well, maybe science has the answer. Maybe there is no the invisible man in the sky that created everything. Maybe it's all random chance and science will answer it. So I went into science and I started learning science. And I'm always into reading and self-educating myself. And long story short, by 2001, so my search started around early 1998, when I could speak English finally a little bit, you know. By 2001, I was an atheist. And I was an evolutionary guy. I believed in evolution theory, and you know, everything is random chance and plasma, and Coco the monkey is my ancestor, and you know, all that stuff. And I mean, when you think about it, when you tell people that they come from animals and their ancestors are animals, and then they act like animals, and you say, why are these people acting like animals? Well, you told them because they are. But I was also not one of those kind of go along to get along atheists. I was one of those rabid atheists. And by rabid atheists, I mean, I didn't keep it to myself. I wanted to find people who believed in something, anything, and I wanted to attack it and I wanted to tear it apart. I enjoyed the ruining people's days. I enjoyed the poking holes in people's fates, and I was pretty good at it. You know, I was pretty good at it because at the very least I had a basic understanding of whatever somebody held as their belief and their value system. One group of people that I constantly bumped into, and they frustrated me, and they were very annoying, and I could never get over them, were Christians. because I knew nothing about Christianity. All I knew about Christianity is what Islam had taught me, which again we'll get into. What Islam teaches about Christianity is completely out to lunch, as you'll see. And I didn't know any scriptures. I had never held the Bible in my hand, so I didn't know. So I said in 2001, I said to myself, I'm going to read the Bible, I'm going to learn about Christianity, and I'm going to prove it wrong. Famous last words. I'm an atheist, right? Yeah. I said, I'm going to prove this thing wrong. But I didn't know where to start. And as destiny would have it, people who I thought were Christians came my way. Jehovah's Witnesses came to my door. And when Jehovah's Witnesses came, I said, Christians, come on in, bring me your Bible, let's study this thing. And I started studying with these two poor the Filipino gals, and I really started going at them really hard, very unforgiving, very unkind. And within a couple of sessions, they knew they couldn't handle me, so the next time they came with an elder. A retired ferry boat captain, a Scottish man from Aberdeen, and this gentleman, he was so kind and he was so patient with me that me and him ended up studying for 3 years together. So my introduction to Christianity, believe it or not, was through the Jehovah's Witnesses, through another cult, and I'm not being unkind to them, So for 3 years we studied together, and during these 3 years I was still a skeptic. I was throwing every question I had and every doubt I had in the kitchen sink at this guy every time he came through the door. And I wasn't kind about it, I was rude about it, the way I would ask questions. I wouldn't say God, I would say the plane, the imaginary planet in the sky. And I was trying to get a rise out of him all the time. But he knew how to handle it. And he realized that I was interested in history, and history was my thing. So he started showing me historical aspects in the Bible. And the very first thing that ever really caught my attention about the Bible was a passage in Isaiah. Reading Isaiah about the prophecy about Cyrus, where 180 years before Cyrus ever came along, and I know Cyrus. Cyrus is the founder of the nation I came from. He's the founder of Persia, so I know him. I've been to his tomb. I got pictures on it, right? So when I'm reading in Isaiah, 180 years before this guy was born, how he's called by name, and it even it goes on to explain how he's going to conquer Babylon. 2 centuries before he did. The river is drying up, and the iron bar is being cut, and him taking the city without a fight. And I'm thinking, there's something to this. I got to explore this even more. So that really got the hook in me. I started studying the Bible, and I was still not a believer. I was still a skeptic. But now I was thinking, okay, now I got to separate the things that they happen to hit on right. I got to see what they coincidentally got right, and then attack the things that is all wrong. And I would throw question after question after question. I would bring under scrutiny any claims of the Bible, historic, linguistic, philosophical, geographical, and they would all get answered. And I was very frustrated with it, to be honest with you. And this period from 2004, when this started to happen, and I got to tell you another thing. In 2004, I also moved on from Jehovah's Witnesses. Because now I have learned enough on my own about Christianity to say, hey, you guys are Arianists. You guys are considered heretics by Orthodox Christians. You guys, you dismiss the deity of Christ. There's something wrong there. That's what the whole thing revolves around. So I moved on from Jehovah's Witnesses. I got myself a whole bunch of different Bible versions, went to a whole lot of different denominations, checked out a whole lot of websites, read as much as I could, and I started learning more and more about the Bible. And it's this whole period, from 2001 when I held my first Bible to 2012 when I was baptized, 11-year period, I call it the long crawl, because I very, very slowly crawled towards the fence, and I finally climbed on top of the fence, and I sat in that uncomfortable fence for a very long time, and then I finally got off of it, made my way to the road, and stepped on the road. But during this time, I had a lot of help from Christians. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I can't tell you that I had one of those the supernatural experiences, which a lot of Muslims have. A lot of Muslims are coming to Christ, and they're coming through either supernatural experiences, visitations from Christ, dreams, or when you ask them, how did you get there? They say it was the love of a Christian neighbor. I had to pick the long way, the hard way, right? But eventually by 2010, I was a believer, but I was reluctant to accept. There's a big difference between that. There's a big difference between somebody who believes in God, believes in Jesus, and somebody who accepts Jesus, who accepts Him as Lord. Why? Because I always explain, I say because at that point, I was a drug taker, I was a pot grower, I was a drug dealer, I was involved in all sorts of criminal activity, I was the belle of the ball in my the group of friends. You know, I was a fornicator, I was a liar, I was a drunkard, I was the wretch from the song, you know, the Amazing Grace, when they sing about the wretch, that was this guy here. And the problem was, I liked that lifestyle. And I didn't want to change it. I couldn't even fathom changing it. I couldn't fathom going a day sober. You know, I couldn't think about waking up and not being under some kind of influence within an hour. And if I knew if I accepted this Christianity, and the thing with me is I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. I wasn't going to pretend. If I accepted Christianity, I had to follow all the rules, and if I followed all the rules, my life was going to be very dull. And all my friends were going to leave me, and there would have to be a drastic change. So I was reluctant. I was fighting it. And this went on for about 2 years. But during this 2 years, something that happened was I had been living with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, for 10 years. We didn't need to get married. Marriage is just a piece of paper, right? We loved each other, and that was all that was enough. But by the time that I got to my 2010 point, I went up to her one day and I said, I got to talk to you. And I remember she met me when I was the rabid atheist, right? So I said, hon, I believe in God. And she said, yeah, I kind of noticed that. and I said, I got to tell you, the God I believe in is the God of the Bible too. And she said, yeah, I know, you're sitting up at night, you got like sticky notes all over the place, and like, you know, notes and like reading your books and all that. And I said, and listen, because I believe in these things, me and you need to make it right, we need to get married. And she really liked that idea. So within a couple of months we were married. We started planning our family. Now mind you, at this time we're not saved, we're not baptized. We said, okay, let's have a family, and let's move out of Vancouver. Let's move to a small, what we said was, let's move to a small spiritual community somewhere in the interior. And when I spent the whole year, well, almost the whole year, during her pregnancy, looking for a place. I started all the way from up in Prince George and moved my way down to the Okanagan and the Kootenays, just doing road trips as much as I could. And I finally settled on a town that I thought was very spiritual. And it's called Nelson, British Columbia. And sometimes I mention that to people, and you hear chuckles out of the crowd, and that's because those people know about Nelson. Because Nelson is the most hippie, new agey, weird little town that you will ever travel to. The town was built on pot money. When you go to this town, I mean, when you start to enter the town, there's a cloud of pot smoke just hanging out. Everything's hemp, and these are not real hippies either. These are hippies who are driving $60,000 cars and getting off at the organic store, you know. So we moved there before we knew what we were getting into. We moved there with our daughter, and when we were going there, somebody, and I gotta tell you, my mother, who also was approached by the Jehovah's Witnesses at the same time as me, was saved before me, but not through them. Never got baptized in Jehovah, in the witness in the Kingdom Hall. She got baptized into a charismatic, spirit-filled church, and she still goes there in North Vancouver, which is a suburb of Vancouver. And one of her church friends had recommended that we hook up with this little church in Nelson when we got there, because they were going to help us settle in. So when we got there, we went to this church and we hung out with them. They run a soup kitchen, so like, you know, we went there a couple of times and did some volunteer work and hung out. And I'm a cook by trade. I studied agricultural sciences when I was a pot grower. I literally went to school for it for 4 years, because when I do something, I want to do it right. But I worked as I started the 12, 13 years ago as a dishwasher in a restaurant, and I finally moved my way up to a sous chef just by training, by like on the job training. So we moved there. I got myself a couple of jobs, and I started doing volunteer work at this church, and I started a discipleship study program with the pastor there, and that 1 year of discipleship, and this is why I'm always harping on how important discipleship through the church is. That 1 year of personal one-on-one, sitting down and getting to the nitty-gritty of stuff, really helped out and moved me over the hump. And during this whole time, and again, I don't want to step on anybody's theological beliefs, but I don't know what order you believe the salvation happens, but I'm pretty sure that I was indwelt by the Spirit before I was dipped in the water. That dipping in the water is a nice little gesture, but it's really a physical outward gesture.
Yeah.
My theological good disclaimer here. But I got to a point where, and I always tell people, and this is God's honest truth, like I said, I haven't had any extravagant supernatural experiences. But at one point during my search, I got so tired because I would be reading scriptures and not getting it. I could understand it, but I was not getting it. And I still to this day can't pray properly. Like I said, I don't have the church vocabulary down yet. But I remember my very first, what could be passed as a prayer was me kind of hand in the pocket, mumbling, going, dude, you know, if you're there, help me understand this. I'm not getting this. And don't you know what, a few days later, I'm sitting down on the couch, I'm reading scriptures, and the next thing I know, it's 2 hours later, and I'm wet with tears. Because it just pierced right through my heart. And it hurt. And when you read the Word of God and start to hurt you, then you know it's working, you know. And I always tell people this, the Word of God that saved me, and the Word of God is powerful, because it's with His Word that He created everything. You know, open up Genesis and see what He did in the beginning. It was His Word, His utterance. But 2012, I finally decided that I believed enough to do the public declaration. So I was baptized on Palm Sunday 2012. I chose that day. I said that's the day Jesus walked into Jerusalem. You know, that's the day I wanted to walk into my heart. You know, and started doing a lot of volunteer work. And my life dramatically changed. I started becoming a better husband, better dad, better brother, better friend, better employee, just a better guy walking down the street. And it wasn't by my own notion, you know. My wife eventually, within a year after me, she was saved and was baptized. And when people ask her, what's your testimony? She says, see this guy? I watched him in 10 years go from a jerk to a pretty okay guy. and the Jesus that can do that to him, he's goodbye me. Right? And during this time, we volunteered as much as we could. My wife actually spent more time at our church than I did, even before she was sick. They still rub that in my face all the time. But I worked, she ran a the child minding business out of our home. Our plan was save enough money, buy a house, start a little restaurant of our own in Nelson, and just live a nice, cushy little life. You know, it's a beautiful place, like a vacation spot. Why not? And during this whole time, every extra time we had, we did volunteer work through the church, but something just wasn't enough. You know, and I tell people this all the time. I say that some of the best Christians are the hard-fought Christians, are the converted new Christians, because I had wasted so much time, and like in my mind I was saying, I wasted so much time with all this crud out there. Now I got to catch up, and I got to do as much as I can. I got to be involved as much as I can. And eventually I started hearing about, we had a tour from our Bible college, like the tour that we came out and did back in March. The tour came through our town, and I never even heard of Bible college. I didn't know there was something in Bible college. I thought you just go and do church, and you learn enough, and you hang out with the pastor enough, and you learn how to do things, right? So I said, okay, now again, it's now that I know Christianity is the truth, and I finally found the truth. I finally found my precious. Now I want to learn everything about it, because not only do I want to be solid in my faith, but I want to be able to answer people if they're attacking it, and I also want to be able to help people understand it and answer their questions, because there's so much misconception out there about Christianity, misunderstanding. So we uprooted ourselves, used all of our savings for the past 2 years, because we don't like going into debt. We've been paying for the school, and God's been blessing us. And up until last year, my idea was that I'm going to do 3-4 years of school. I'm going to get a degree. I'm going to go back to our little hometown, and I'm going to take over from our retiring pastor. I'm going to have a nice little, cushy pastor's job and live in Nelson and what have you. And that was the plan. But God's got other ideas. You know, he's been smacking me and leading me by the ear all over the place these past few years. And one of the things that I never wanted to deal with was I didn't like giving people my testimony. Now, testimonies are important. Testimonies are the encouraging, encouraging accounts. They encourage and edify the other Christians. They plant seeds in non-believers. Testimonies are very important, but at the end of the day, testimonies are words. The real testimony of a Christian is their walk, is their conduct, is what they do with their lives, you know. And I didn't really like telling my testimony, first of all, because it's so long. When you really get down to it, it's just so long, you know, that I listen to all these kids at these college events and all these camps, and it's like nice 5-minute little testimonies, and I was such and such, you know, the VBS, and I accepted the Lord, and here we are. You know, where I've always been a believer, so well, good for you, rub it in my face, whatever you, right? And not everybody had that privilege, right? But last year, and the main thing was I never wanted to talk about Islam, didn't want to talk about my Muslim background, didn't want to deal with Muslims. To be honest with you, I was angry at Muslims. Not just at Islam, I was angry at Muslims. I was being, what do they call it? Passive aggressive. You know, I was blaming Muslims for the same thing they're victims of the same thing that I was a victim of, but I was blaming the victims, if you will, for perpetuating it. Last year, one of our professors, who's actually Professor Kevin Funk, who's from Steinbach here and goes to the St. Anne Church here, in the Old Testament the survey class, he gave me a project. He said, do a study on a minor, or do a study on an Old Testament character. And I said, I'm going to do Melchizedek. You know, and he said, you're not going to find anything on him. He's mentioned a couple times. There's nothing solid out there. It's all speculation. I want factual character-based stuff. I said, I'll find it. 3 days to the deadline, I went to his office and said, Kevin, I can't do this. I can't find anything. There's nothing out there. And he said, okay, I'll assign you somebody. And he looked through his little list and he said, Jonah's open. Go do Jonah. And I walked out of that office and I said, oh, hot dog. Jonah, like 4 chapters, 1.5 page, the big fish. I know this thing inside and out. That's easy, right? That was life-changing. Because when I did my work on Jonah, when I really read and studied and read the commentaries on what was happening with this guy, I was so convicted. I started calling myself a Jonah. I said, I'm a Jonah. You know, I was called to Nineveh. And I don't want to go. I happen to be in a position because of my background, not by choice, but because of my background, because of the road I've come up from, that I can speak on a certain thing, and I don't want to do it. Consequently, you know Nineveh's still around? You know what it's called? No, the city of Nineveh is called Mosul in northern Iraq. That's where one of the biggest massacres of Christians happened by ISIS a couple of years back. So it's still there, you know. You know where the city of Ur is, where Abraham's from? It's called Basra. That's in Iraq too. You know, so that area is very, people don't understand that area is all biblical. It's just the names have changed a little bit. But, and the reason that I started feeling that I have a privilege to talk about this subject, which is Islam, is number one, I lived it. I understand it linguistically. I understand its theology. I understand its problems. And again, I'm sorry to say this, but more than anything, I'm the right shade of color to stand up here and talk about it and not have somebody right away dismiss what I'm saying because you're the racist white guy up there. What do you know about Islam, right? So that kind of gives me an in, if you will, to talk about this thing. And when I started talking about this thing last year, it was all over the place, it was disorganized, it didn't make a lot of sense, you know, it was a lot of speculation and a lot of, you know, just the regular stuff that you hear everywhere about Islam, just repeating it. And then I started really studying this thing. I started getting myself several copies of the Quran, you know, that would go to mosques and to the bookstores and pretend I'm still a Muslim. I got the books, right? And I would get the books and I started reading them, and I mean, the more I dig, the more of a stench is coming out of this thing. And the problem that I'm finding more and more is that majority of the Westerners dare I say, 99.9% of people in the West have never read the Quran, never studied this thing. But everybody's got an idea and an opinion about it. And their opinions, whether it's for or against, is always based on what they have heard from the media, from the government, from the culture, or from some group. And within the church, I mean, yeah, Christians, they say, no, Islam's got to be false because we got the truth. That's good and well. That works for you. But if you're going to evangelize to a Muslim, or talk to some of these bleeding heart, the social justice warrior, equality people out there who are saying, oh, Islam is a religion of peace and all that crap, you have to have something solid besides saying, Islam is bad, Islam is wrong, well, why? Once you start presenting it with some facts, not something you make up, but from its own scriptures, from their own writings, then the ball game gets a little changed, you know? And one of the things that motivates me even more is this. I say this to people, I say, again, I've lived in Canada 2/3 of my life. They say the human body regenerates itself every 7 years from bone out. So I'm twice Canadian, flesh and blood. And my mindset has become Canadianized, westernized. But I still hold on to some remnants, just like I hold on to my hair color and my skin color and a little bit of my accent. I still hold on to certain parts of my identity and my mindset from my days in the East. And one of those is, I don't care if I hurt people's feelings like you Canadians do. I don't care if I step on people's toes. As long as I'm factually correct, I don't care to be politically correct. You know, if I'm wrong about a fact, by all means correct me, I become a better person for it. If I'm right and it's a fact, and you had your sensibilities hurt, too bad. You know, get over it, grow up, deal with it. And that's what we're really missing here. And when it comes to bad ideologies, like Islam, the reason they thrive and the reason they grow is because they have two allies in our society. Number one is ignorance of the facts, of what they really are. And number two is this atmosphere of political correctness, which gives rise to that ignorance and doesn't allow exposure and the light to come on these things so they can operate even more. I was saying it today, again, that I don't mean to apologize for it, but I sometimes use really extreme analogies, right? In the early 1930s, a bad ideology started rearing its ugly head up in Germany. A nation of 60 million people in the middle of Europe, within a few years, set the whole world on fire because it went unchecked. And it took tens of millions of dead from around the world to not stop it and put it away, but to at least blunt it. It's still around. The National Socialism Nazi idea is still around. Now, imagine this. Imagine an ideology that's just as bad, more militant, more violent, more bent on global domination. An ideology where the idea of the yellow star for the Jews came from. The first people to ever use an identifier like that were the Muslims, who made the Jews wear the yellow belt and yellow shawl around their waist. So imagine an ideology hundreds of times worse than the Nazis, and it's had 1,400 years to grow and fester. And instead of 16 million people, it's got 1.6 billion people infected. You know, and the problem with Islam is this: the advent of Islam was a declaration of war. It was a declaration of war on God and His truth, first of all, and then on God's people and creation, humanity. You know, and the first line of victims of Islam are Muslims themselves. Let's not get it twisted. They're the first and foremost victims of it. The second group of victims is everybody else. Because now you've got, you know, you hear this all the time. So-and-so went to Saudi Arabia, so-and-so went to Pakistan, so-and-so went to Libya or Syria, or so-and-so went to this really bad mosque, or listened to this really fiery imam, and they got radicalized. How does a building, how does a piece of land, how does a guy in a turban radicalize someone? It's the ideology that radicalizes someone. You know? And that ideology, there's something wrong with it, and it needs to be talked about. But the problem is, the minute you open your mouth, it's Islamophobia and it's bigotry that they yell. You know? And they don't take into account that 99% of violent attacks and terror attacks around the world are done by followers of true Islam, what I call Mohammedan Islam. Okay? If 99% of killings around the world were done by green people, and you started developing a fear of green people, and you started saying maybe we need to keep an eye on these green people, they couldn't come and tell you that you're greenophobic. Because phobia is an undue, unreasonable fear of something, or concern about something. This is not. And these kind of things are my motivations, for one part. My motivations are really love at the end of the day. I love the Muslims because I know Muslims, they love God. They just got the wrong God. They're zealous people. If you get a little bit of the Muslim convert blood infused into the North American church, it's going to revive it. Because they don't care. They don't want to play nice. I always tell people, I say, Jesus was a Middle Eastern. The one concept I have a hard time with in Christianity is turn the other cheek. I don't get it. Because I say in the Middle East, somebody hits me in the face and I turn my other cheek, I'm not telling them to go ahead and hit me. I'm telling them go ahead and hit me if you dare. See what happens to you. You know? And the problem that I see, like the problem that's happening with the church, and I feel like I speak out of turn sometimes, and I should stop. Nobody's throwing a shoe at me or kicking me out yet for saying this kind of stuff. You see, I have this mixed feeling since I've been saved. On one hand, my life is full of joy. It's great. I've got this godly joy, I call it. You know, everything's better about my life. But at the same time, there's so much pain and anger and sorrow. Because the more I learn about the truth, the more I see the insanity and the fallenness of the world around me. I walk down the street, I go to shop at the supermarket, I turn on the radio, the TV, the music, you know, the news. Oh, the news. I'm addicted to the news and it just hurts me. I'm gonna, you know, it's like my doctor tells me I won't give you heart medication, just stop watching the news. And it hurts and it angers me, and it's like the spirit is groaning all the time. Because there's something wrong, something terribly wrong there. And if you want to hear it from me, from the foreigner who doesn't care, if you guys get mad at him, the church is to blame for the state that the church is in. You know, first of all, forget the concept that you have been living in a Christian nation. You are Christians living in a nation. I'm sure a lot of you will know exactly what I'm talking about, where I don't feel like I belong here. You know, it's like, Lord, let me close my eyes and open it and you know, zap me up, because I don't belong here. It's backwards here. It's crazy here. It's insane here. You know, and this is not a new concept. All of these things were understood in the first and second century. Let me read this for you guys. This is a second century letter that was written between from Justin Martyr and another one of the early church fathers. This is how one of them was describing the Christian life in the late 2nd century, 1800 years ago. Christians are different from the rest of their nationality. No, Christians are no different from the rest of their nationality, language, or customs. They live in their own countries, but they're sojourners. They fulfill all their duties as citizens, but they suffer as foreigners. They find their homeland wherever they are, but their homeland is not in any one place. They are in the flesh, but they do not live according to the flesh. They live on earth, but they're citizens of heaven. They obey all laws, but they live at a level higher than all that the laws require. They love all, but all persecute them. And this is 1800 years ago, and that's exactly the state of Christianity today. And the problem is, Christians have been too nice. They've been turning the cheek a little too much. And I don't mean get violent, I don't mean go out there and be abrasive and confrontational, but the fact is that over the past at least, let's say 50 years. I mean, it's been coming a long way. But I've been studying church history, especially recent church history and what's happening. Over the past 50 years, God's values, and God's people have been pushed out of government, out of all aspects of society, out of entertainment, out of markets, out of schools, out of courtrooms. And the whole time they've slowly been retreating because they figure, well, at the end of the day, I'm safe in my home and my church. But the news I got for you is that you're not safe in your home. You're not safe in your church anymore. You know, it's not that all of this craziness is out there and we're good in here. Because the three institutions that God ordained, the family, the church, and a good godly government that punishes evildoers, they've been co-opted and infiltrated and corrupted. You know? And it's coming all the time. And it's you know, they're coming into your home through your TV, through your media.
Yeah.
They're coming into your home and going after your children through the school. You know? They're marching down the streets in your backyards. Right? And I mean, we shouldn't be surprised or shocked about it. I mean, all of this stuff is foretold. All this stuff is foretold. Right? And I don't mean to be a doom or gloomer, because at the end of the day, we win.
Amen.
Amen.
Right? But to get there, it's going to cost and it's going to hurt. The road to that victory, the eventual victory, is going to be hard. You know? And we have to get ready for it. And the issue is that the world system has us under attack. And it's a multifaceted attack. It's from every side. Every ugly, ungodly, perverted thing is popping its head back up. You know? And it's coming, and all their focal points is at the Christians. I was using this analogy this morning. I was saying, you know, some of my favorite movies are the movies where there's 10 different plots going on, and they all converge eventually into one storyline, and they all make sense. And that's what I see happening out there. There's like all these things going on, enemies all about, you know, the violent enemy and secular enemy, and enemy that's spiritual, and enemy that's physical, and they're all attacking one point, and that's the church. You know, and like I said, we're not safe in our homes and in our churches anymore. Eventually, they're going to push us out into the wilderness, like the Lord said they would. You know, and that's one of the things that motivates me to do what I do now, to talk what I talk. And you know, actually, the response that I've had so far, and I'm sure eventually I'm going to get opposition, and I'm going to, you know, start hitting some backlash. But so far over the past year, and maybe it's because I've been in prairies, I've been in Saskatchewan and Alberta and Manitoba, where it's more of a Bible belt, you know, people are still more connected to their roots. It's been very great. And I have no problem when the opposition comes whatsoever, you know, because I decided I was going to be a disciple, I decided I was going to carry my cross, and I have no problem with it, you know. This is what's motivating me. For one part. Again, sorry, I keep going on rabbit trails. And yeah, I think I'm beyond my coupon time here. But what I spoke to Pastor Ernie about after we left here in March, and we came here to do a promotional tour for the school for 2 sessions. And we ended up doing like 11 meetings here in that 1 week. And everybody wanted me to talk about Islam, and I wasn't prepared. I didn't have anything with me. And the problem with it was that I would be at a different place every day, start with my testimony and get a couple of pages into stuff, and then start again the next day somewhere else and get there. And so it never really got, I was told it was informative, I disagreed, but it still didn't really feel substantial. So, the plans for the next 2 days, if you guys can make it, and if you can't make it, they're making audio recordings of this. And I'm going to have some handouts with some resources on it, maps and Islamic scriptures and sources, which I'm going to use. Because what I do, my method is I put Islam on trial. And I don't speculate, I don't bring things up that I make up. I use Islamic sources. Because when you put the defendant on trial, you use their own words, their own actions, you know, and you use it against them to convict them. So that's what we're going to do for the next 2 days. And this is going to be basically the way it's going to go, just so you have an idea. Okay. So tomorrow I'm going to show you some maps. I'm going to go over some definitions, some phrases, and some concepts that you're going to need to know, like a little mini toolbox, in order to understand and decipher the rest of what I'm going to talk about. Then I'm going to basically give you an overview of what the mainstream, kind of conventional view of Islam is. What Islam says it is. It's a religion of peace, and Allah is God, and all of that nonsense. And it's all nonsense. I'll tell you that straight up. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring some charges against Islam. I'm going to read the list of charges. Muhammad was not a prophet. He was a pedophile. He was a murderer. He was a prophet pretender. That Quran is not the words of God. Allah is not God. He's a moon god. He's a pagan god. So I'm going to read out my list of charges. Then I'm going to get into it. So then we're going to get into the meaning of Islam, deal with the theology of Islam, kind of give you guys a very basic understanding what is this whole thing. What is the articles of faith of Islam? More importantly, Islam has a concept that's called the 5 pillars of Islam. That crack house standing on 5 pillars, and we're going to knock those pillars down and bring the whole thing down. And then I'm going to explain to you how the fact is there's 7 pillars to Islam. The 2 that they don't talk about is da'wah, which is evangelism, and jihad, which is war of conquest. They don't talk about that ever. Then we're going to talk about Islam's relationship first to Muslims, the first group of victims, like I said. Muslims in general, Islam's view on women in particular, and Islam's view on homosexuality, because I think that pertains today. Especially after you saw the double standard of what happened in Orlando. The Muslim guy walks in there, kills and names 100 homosexuals. They don't say, "Ooh." But you Christian baker dare to refuse to bake a cake, we're going to string you up. That's the double standard. I call that the unholy alliance of the left and Islam. There's something weird brewing there. And then we're going to talk about the other side of the coin, which is Islam's relationship to non-Muslims, which is the rest of us. Where does Islam stand with us? And that's going to lead us to this whole concept of jihad and the very prevalent the threats that we're facing today. Because, again, as I say, our battles are spiritual battles, true. When it comes to Islam, there's also a physical battle going on with Islam. Okay? It's not just spiritual. And the last piece we're going to talk about is, why should we care about Islam? Why should we learn about it? We know it's false. Why should we learn about it? And I'll explain that to you guys, why I think we need to learn about it. And finally, how do we respond? What do we do about Islam? Because it's one thing to talk about the problem. It's another thing to talk about the solution. And my solution, again, is not based on what I think. It's based on what I think the Bible says we should do. So that's about it for what I have to tell you today. I don't want to get into this stuff for tomorrow, because I want to do it justice. So we'll start tomorrow and we'll figure this thing out so we can have some visual aids for things that are going on. And if you have bring pens and pencils with you tomorrow, if you do come. The handouts that we're going to have, there are going to be sheets in the front. And then, like I said, there are going to be all sorts of scriptures and references and all that. And you might want to take notes just for your own kind of memory later on to see what I was talking about there. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer you. And we will eventually see you tomorrow, hopefully. And bring people if you can. Bring them, because I would love to have more people to talk about. Because the more this gets out, I think we need to talk about it. The elephant in the room, the camel in the room. We need to talk about this, because one of the worst things, like I said, that's happening is that they have browbeaten us into not even talking about this. The Muslim says, "I'll kill you if you draw about my religion, if you talk about my religion." And the government says, "I'll charge you with hate speech if you talk about this religion." And for the life of me, again, I don't understand. If I stand up here and I quote from Quran, which is the words of Allah, and I quote from the Hadith, which is the words of Muhammad, and I quote from the Tafsir, which is the commentaries of 1400 years of Islamic the jurisprudence and Islamic theologians, how can that be hate speech? I'm just reading, you know?
As long as you don't say Jesus, you should be okay.
Exactly, eh?
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you have any questions from just so far, please go ahead.
First,
Yes, sir.
we'll